Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the press conference on the performance of the Philippine economy for the first quarter of 2020 via Zoom video conferencing. Highlights of today's press conference will be tweeted live through the Twitter account at PSA.gov.ph. Our official hashtag is #PHGDP. This conference will also be live streamed through the official Facebook page of the Philippine Statistics Authority. I am Noreen of the Philippine Statistics Authority, and I will be your moderator for this conference. Now let me introduce to you our resource persons from the National Economic and Development Authority and the Philippine Statistics Authority. We have Acting Socioeconomic Planning Secretary, Karl Kendrick T. Chua, and Undersecretary Claire Dennis S. Mapa. To officially start, let us have USEC Claire Dennis S. Mapa, PSA National Statistician and Civil Registrar General, for the presentation on the overall revision and rebasing on the national accounts of the Philippines. This will be followed by the report on the performance of the economy for the first quarter of 2020.
Okay, good morning everyone. Before we proceed with the report on the performance of the Philippine economy for the first quarter of 2020, let me first present a few slides on the recently released, revised and rebased Philippine System of National Accounts. With the approval of the Philippine Statistics Authority Board Resolution number 11, Series of 2018, the Philippine Statistics Authority has embarked in series of activities to revise and rebase to 2018 the Philippine System of National Accounts. As an international practice, the revision and rebasing of national accounts is being done to incorporate the latest Systems of National Accounts recommendation from the UN Statistics Division. Also, to adopt updated classification system for industries and commodities, to capture changes in economic landscape, and to utilize updated, additional, and comprehensive data. In the end, we need updated economic tools for evidence-based decision-making towards improved welfare. This activity has been the fifth overall revision and rebasing since the compilation of the national accounts in 1950. This milestone has been approved and endorsed by the Philippine Statistics Authority Board. One of the major features of the overall revision and rebasing is to give importance and highlight new industries and expenditure items. For the production, a total of 16 industries will now be reported from the previous 11 industries. Accommodation and food service activities, education, and human health and social work activities are now highlighted. These were previously lumped with other services. The real estate, renting, and business activities in the 2000-based Philippine Systems of National Accounts is now divided into two. The first is real estate and ownership of dwellings, and the second one is professional and business services. Moreover, information and communication industry is now highlighted. The communication industry was in the transportation, storage, and communication, while the information industry was part of the manufacturing, real estate, renting, and other business activities and other services. On the expenditure side, an addition to highlighted expenditure items is the valuables. Valuables are produced goods of considerable value that are not primarily used for production or consumption purposes, but are held as store of value over time. Examples of this are precious metals and stones, antiques and art objects, collectibles such as stamps and coins, and other valuables that have recognized market value. These are just some of the results of the overall revision and rebasing. On the average from 2000 to 2019, difference between the new and the old series levels at current prices is about 4.3%. In 2019, the gross domestic product at current prices was revised from around 18.61 trillion to 19.52 trillion. At constant prices, on the average from 2000 to 2019, difference between the new and the old series is at 96.5%. In 2019, the gross domestic product at constant prices was revised from around 9.75 trillion using the 2000 base prices to 19.37 trillion using the 2018 prices. In effect, the rebasing accounts for about 89.3% of the overall revision. For more information on the results of the overall revision and rebasing of the national accounts, the time series, as well as other improvements and frequently asked questions, you may visit our website at the Philippine Statistics Authority. At this point, the Philippine Statistics Authority will now present the report on the performance of the Philippine economy for the first quarter of 2020. The gross domestic product, or GDP, declined by 0.2% in the first quarter of 2020. This is the first contraction since the fourth quarter of 1998. Net primary income, or NPI, from the rest of the world and gross national income, or GNI, both declined by 4.4% and 0.6% respectively. On a seasonally adjusted basis, the gross domestic product posted a quarter-on-quarter decline of 5.1% in the first quarter of 2020. Gross national income also declined by about 5.2%. For the first quarter of 2020, among the major economic sectors, agriculture, forestry and fishing, and industry contracted by 0.4% and 3.0% respectively. On the other hand, services posted a growth of 1.4% during the period. On a seasonally adjusted basis, all major industries posted a quarter-on-quarter decline. Agriculture declined by 1.1%, services declined by 4.3%, and industry by 8.0%. In the first quarter of 2020, per capita GDP posted a decline of 1.5%. This was 4.2% in the same quarter of the previous year. Meanwhile, per capita GNI and per capita household final consumption expenditure also posted decline by 2.0% and 1.2% respectively. Among the three major economic sectors, industry and agriculture pulled down the growth by 0.9 percentage point and 0.04 percentage point respectively. Services contributed positively to the GDP growth in the first quarter of 2020 with 0.8 percentage point. On the production side, financial and insurance activities posted the highest growth in the first quarter of 2020 with 9.6%. This was followed by human health and social work with 9.2%, information and communication with 5.7%, and electricity, steam, water, and waste management with 5.3%. Major contributors to the GDP growth in the first quarter of 2020 were financial and insurance activities with 0.9 percentage point, Public Administration and Defense, compulsory Social Security with 0.2 percentage point, and wholesale and retail trade, repair of motorcycles and motor vehicles at 0.2 percentage point. On the other hand, major contributors to the decline were manufacturing with 0.7 percentage point, transportation and storage with 0.5 percentage point, and accommodation and food service activities with 0.4 percentage point. On the demand side, government final consumption expenditure posted the highest growth of 7.1% in the first quarter of 2020, followed by intellectual property product with 6.6% and household final consumption expenditure with 0.2%. For the first quarter of 2020, major contributors to the GDP growth from the expenditure side were net exports with 2.9 percentage points, government final consumption expenditure with 0.8 percentage point, and household final consumption expenditure with 0.1 percentage point. On the other hand, major contributors to the decline were changes in inventories with 3.6 percentage points, durable equipment with 0.6 percentage point, and construction with 0.5 percentage point. The Philippine Statistics Authority appreciates your presence in the first quarter 2020 National Accounts Press Conference. And we look forward to meeting you again on August 6, 2020, when we report the performance of the Philippine economy for the second quarter of 2020. Thank you very much and good morning.
Thank you very much, Yusek Mapa. Now let us hear the statement of Acting NEDA Secretary Karl Kendrick T. Chua.
Good morning. Can you hear me? You can hear me? Okay, very good. To our colleagues from the Philippine Statistics Authority, fellow workers in government, friends from the media, and fellow Filipinos, good morning to all of you. Our country has faced significant socio-economic risks and shocks during the first quarter of 2020, all totally unexpected. The Taal volcano eruption in January, a significant decline in tourism and trade starting in February due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and the need to implement the enhanced community quarantine in Luzon and other parts of the country starting March. Containing the spread of the virus and saving hundreds of thousands of lives through the imposition of the ECQ has come at a great cost to the Philippine economy. Our economic growth is showing weaker performance compared to the past 2 decades. Even so, our priorities are clear: to protect lives and health of our people. COVID-19 has certainly posed serious challenges to the country's strong growth and development prospects. Facing unprecedented challenges, the Philippine economy not surprisingly contracted by 0.2% in the first quarter of 2020, compared to the 5.7% growth during the same period last year. This is the first time real GDP growth fell into negative territory since 1998 during the combined El Nino and Asian financial crisis. On the demand side, household consumption significantly slowed down by 0.2%, as almost all items posted weaker growth. An exception was household spending on health, which grew by 11.5%, faster than the 6.9% in Q4 2019. Meanwhile, government spending grew by 7.1%, reflecting the government's commitment to implement its program, though slower than the 17% in Q4 2019, when the national government executed its catch-up spending for 2019. This is still higher than the 6.4% growth in government expenditure in the same period last year. On the supply side, all major sectors of the economy posted weaker growth, as only those that provide essential goods and services were allowed to operate during the ECQ. Growth in the services sector significantly moderated to 1.4%. Industry sector growth also declined by 3%, with a drop in manufacturing and construction and a sustained decline in mining and quarrying. The agriculture, fishery, and forestry sector contracted by 0.4%, primarily on account of lower production of palay and fishing and aquaculture. According to the April 2020 World Economic Outlook of the International Monetary Fund, or IMF, the global economy is projected to contract by 3% this year and could beat the 1.7% drop in GDP recorded a year after the 2008 global financial crisis. Where we are now could potentially be the worst global recession since the Great Depression of the 1930s. We are aware of the many sacrifices we all had to make with the imposition of the ECQ. We are very thankful to those who have tirelessly worked with us in finding solutions, in sacrificing a lot as frontliners in hospitals, in bringing relief goods and subsidies to the people, and even those who stayed at home to keep the virus from spreading. Our surveys show that while 2/3 of businesses did not operate during the ECQ, only about 20% of these laid off their workers. We also know that about 45% of non-government and self-employed workers lost their sources of income. The government stands ready to help them through our various social amelioration and wage subsidy programs. The non-health workers at the front lines sacrifice every day, some having to walk long distances to make sure the rest of us could still buy our food, medicines, groceries, and other essential items. LGUs have stepped up with innovations to overcome challenges of enforcing the ECQ and responding to medical needs. Some businesses have repurposed their production to produce the much-needed personal protective equipments, or PPEs. The church has opened its doors to house healthcare workers and other frontliners. The academe and those in technology industry have helped government by providing technological and ICT solutions to address a number of issues related to our COVID-19 response. And especially our health workers have been selfless in sacrificing their very lives just to care for the sick, even the suspected and probable cases, those in quarantine, and the non-COVID patients. Our combined sacrifice has resulted in a lower number of deaths, and we intend to keep it low. For this reason, we continue to enjoin everyone to exert every effort to minimize the transmission of the virus so as not to squander our initial gains. We need to continue to practice social distancing, proper personal hygiene, and health etiquette, and frequent sanitation and disinfection protocols at all times and at all places. All these sacrifices have been key to buying us more time to increase our health system capacity, lower the risk of infection, and save hundreds of thousands of lives, including possibly our own family members and friends. We have increased our testing capacity to 22 testing laboratories. We hope to do more. We are also setting up 4 mega swabbing centers to complement the target of conducting 30,000 tests a day by the end of May. We have procured several test kits from abroad. Some have been donated. Other countries and development partners have assisted us with more, and we now have locally manufactured test kits and PPEs. We also have several quarantine facilities across the country. We have also added and will continue to add COVID-19 treatment facilities. Even before the imposition of the ECQ, government has put together a package of assistance to ensure that every family would have food on their table. We thank very much the many contributions of the business sector and the civil society. In the coming weeks, the economic team and our legislators will work out an economic recovery program that will gradually get people back to work, get businesses to normalize, and get our country back on track to achieve our pre-crisis growth and job potential. In this new normal that we are facing, structural reforms are needed to improve our resiliency and help us prepare for similar challenges in the future. Stimulating our economy needs to begin with stimulating domestic demand or consumption. Demand will only increase if people feel safe and are confident that the healthcare system is working for them. Stimulating domestic demand can begin with ensuring that agricultural production, food manufacturing, and the entire value chain, including logistics, from the farm to the table, are able to operate at the highest possible capacity within the parameters that will protect the health and well-being of both producers and consumers. Despite these challenges, we are still well positioned to recover strongly because of our country's solid macroeconomic and fiscal management. The recent legislation of crucial economic and tax reforms, such as the Tax Reform for Acceleration and Inclusion or TRAIN Law, the Sin Tax Law of 2019 and 2020, and the Rice Tarification Law, the Universal Healthcare Law, and the Ease of Doing Business Law have all helped us prepare for any crisis. We continue to enjoy low and stable inflation, particularly after the passage of the Rice Tarification Act. In 2018 and 2019, we recorded the lowest poverty rate, unemployment rate, and underemployment rate in many decades, thanks in the large part to our Build, Build, Build program. Our government also maintained a strong fiscal position with a 2019 revenue to GDP ratio of 16.1%, the highest since 1997, and a national government debt to GDP ratio of 39.6%, the lowest since 1986, given the available data. We received our highest ever credit rating of BBB+, one notch below the A rating category. Just recently, The Economist magazine ranked the Philippines sixth among selected emerging economies in the world and the best among those ranked from Southeast Asia in terms of financial strength. This shows that the country has gained and continues to enjoy the confidence of the international community, which puts us in a position to finance our COVID-19 response measures sustainably to fight the virus, protect families and workers, and prepare for our recovery program. We remain committed to getting our Build, Build, Build program back on track. We have proven over the past few years and we can actually implement infrastructure projects at an accelerated pace and create millions of jobs while reducing the cost of logistics, especially for micro, small, and medium enterprises. Even as we ramped up implementation of our infrastructure projects, we are very much aware of the health risk. Thus, we will have to reprioritize projects and will be putting in place stringent health and safety measures. This COVID-19 crisis has impressed upon us the need to transition to a digital economy. Our digital infrastructure needs to be improved. The digital divide needs to be addressed. A number of structural reforms are also needed and be put in place. Before the COVID-19 crisis, we were on track to becoming an upper middle income country this year. If we can quickly transition to the new normal, we can aspire for so much more. These are extraordinary trying times, and the road ahead of us continues to be challenging and uncertain. Bear in mind that this crisis, like others before it, shall also pass, especially because we are working together as a nation. All these give us hope that the Filipino nation can rise above this temporary setback, and the Philippine economy can end the year with a respectable performance. As we recover, our socio-economic policies will have to be adaptive and responsive to the evolving realities. Rest assured that the economic team will continue to work hard to restore our confidence, our growth trajectory, and enable each and every Filipino to attain these aspirations. Matatag, maginhawa, at panatag na buhay. Thank you very much, and please always take care.
Chua. You are in Zoom could ask questions by raising your hands virtually. To do this, center of your screen, click on the icon called Participants. Panel will appear and you must click the Raise Hand button. After you are acknowledged, you will be unmuted so you can ask your question. When we are done with the question, please don't forget to click the hand button so we could move on to other questions. May we also request that if your question in mind is related to the topic at hand, you may send a message so we could prioritize you before we proceed to another topic. Lastly, kindly limit questions related to the overall and rebasing of the national of the Philippine economy. At this point, we are now open for your questions. All right. We have your microphone. Kindly allow its access so you can introduce yourself, media agency you are representing, and address question to our panel. Hello, Miss Serena. All right. Mute, Miss Serena. All right. Hello. Miss Celerina. Having a problem with the connection. Let us proceed to the question of Mr. Michael Flores.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Okay. Thank you. I'm Mikael Flores of Agence France Press. Secretary Carl, well, this is the worst since 1998, and we started the quarantine late March towards the latter end of the first quarter, and a bulk of the community quarantine happened in the second quarter. So, what's going to be our outlook like for the second quarter going forward? And for our specific drivers, our economy, what's the worst case scenario that we are looking at in terms of our OFW remittances, which drive domestic demand, and our BPO sector, which drives the services industry, so the services sector.
Uh, Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Well, basically, as I mentioned, the first quarter saw three shocks of increasing magnitude. Taal volcano that affected an area of 50% of the GDP, followed by the COVID pandemic that resulted in significant decline of trade and tourism in February and March. And since March, mid-March, we have imposed ECQ on an area that is basically 70% of the economy. So all these factors actually contributed to the decline in GDP, the slight decline. And if I compare this to previous crises in 2009 and 1998, the magnitude of the impact suggests that this decline, this small decline, is actually respectable. And compared to other countries, we are in a better footing. And we have given priority to saving lives, which cannot be costed over the temporary setback in the economy. Now, in the second quarter, we know that April will be very bad because the ECQ extends. But we also know that starting May, two-thirds of the country's LGUs have been put in the GCQ. And that is basically light that we are seeing at the end of the tunnel. Now, we will use our policies proactively to ensure that we gradually normalize. We are hoping that with the mega swabbing, the 30,000 tests per day by the end of May, we can start to reverse the economic trajectory by June, so that by the second half of the year, we can fully recover. So the idea here is that we use our policies and our collective effort to proactively shape our future into a recovery that looks more like a V shape. so that by the end of the year, we will have a respectable growth performance. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Chua.
Thank you, Secretary Chua. Next, let's have the question of Miss Bea Laforga.
Po, can you hear me, Sir Secretary?
Yes.
And Secretary, this is Bea Lafarga po from Business World. Sir, I just want to ask, I understand that the economic team is projecting that GDP, full year GDP will be flat, 0% growth or 1% contraction this year. Secretary, may I ask, what is the DBCC's official economic output target this year? Or are we even considering to drop numerical GDP growth target? Or are we sticking to the 6.5 to 7.5 target adopted during the 177th DBCC meeting in December? Thank you.
Thank you, Bea. Well, a target is a target. If you move the target all the time, then that's not a target. So the target stays. But the reality and the emerging number is that we are going to see flat growth or slightly negative. And that is where we are today, 0 to minus 0.8%. Now, the first quarter, I think, is still respectable given the very difficult environment that we are in. Second quarter might be worse, but we are using our policies to proactively manage our trajectory so that by the second half, we can recover gradually. So for now, the DBCC is sticking with the 0 to the minus 0.8 growth projection for the year. And we will see over the months if we need to adapt and be more realistic. But I think with the progress that we are seeing on the health side, there is a very strong chance that we will have a good recovery.
Thank you, Secretary.
Thank you. Now, let's have another question from Mr. Warren de Guzman.
Hello, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, Warren.
Okay, good morning, Yusek Mapa and Secretary Chua. Regarding the rebasing, you were able to separate and identify the contributions of specific sectors. I was wondering if you could appraise us of the performance of BPO specifically, as well as semiconductor specifically, and would you tell us if these industries might already be classified as industries significantly impacted by COVID-19 and might be in need of certain targeted incentives that you're planning to roll out as part of your economic recovery?
Yeah, thank you very much, Warren. Well, as I mentioned in the presentation, on the manufacturing side, this was really hit because the manufacturing declined by 3.6% this quarter, and this was the lowest since third quarter of 2009. On the other hand, the BPOs, which are part of the information and communication, still posted a relatively high growth of 5.7%. And the problem really now is really in the manufacturing sector, based on our data.
Thank you. Next, let us have Prince Magtulis.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, sir. This is Prince Magtulis from Philstar.com. Sir, this question is for Yusek Mapa and Secretary Karl. Regarding the data gathering that you had for this GDP round, was there any problem encountered considering the skeleton workforce of government and some delayed official releases from BSP and the Treasury in terms of data, and how does that affect the current reading? Should we expect a massive revision in the coming in the months ahead? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Prince. Whenever we report the preliminary GDP, just like what we reported today, we don't really have the complete data set. But just to give you some idea, when we compile the gross national product and the gross domestic product and the gross national income, we are actually using about 156 data sets. Now, for this quarter, we were able to collect 136 data sets. And computing for incorporating the weights of these different data sets from the different sectors, our GDP reported today actually came from about 92% of the information that we usually collect. So this is a good data set, but of course, as the new information becomes available, we will revise the GDP as the practice of the PSA, and we will report if there are any revision, both of the GDP and the subsectors in during the second quarter, which will be reported sometime August 2020.
Thank you, Yusek Papa. We have a follow-up question from Prince Magtulis. Could we unmute the mic of Prince Magtulis?
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Please proceed with your question.
Sir, just a follow up, the 92% of information that you're holding in terms of the GDP calculations, compared to normal times, is that a good measure already? Normally, ilang percent po yung nakukuha natin information in normal times that we have? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Prince. We don't really get 100%, so this number is just about right. 90% to 95% information for computation of the quarter's GDP is good for PSA. So we don't really have the 100% when we report the preliminary results.
Thank you, Yusek Mapa. I guess we have a few more questions. Let's have again from Mr. Warren de Guzman.
Hi, for Secretary Chua. Again, regarding the economic recovery plan, considering what you have now with the first quarter GDP, and of course, the results of the survey that you've been talking about for the last couple of days, can we get an approximation of what the economic recovery plan will look like for specific sectors, like semicon or BPO, although Yusek Mapa already mentioned that BPO has done quite well?
Well, first of all, we are seeing some correlation between the GDP growth rates that we are reporting today and the results of our survey. We surveyed consumers and 300,000 responded in the first week of April. We surveyed small businesses and 44,000 responded. We also surveyed farmers and around 8,000 responded. And basically what we learned from them is that they are experiencing significant income and also pressures on the jobs retention. And that is why in March, when the Bayanihan law was passed, the priority was to support 18 million poor and low-income families whose no work, no pay status makes them highly vulnerable. In April, we launched the small business wage subsidy. And as of today, we are already crediting 1.2 or 1.3 million employees, and they can check their bank accounts. Out of the 2.5 million, I think, who have applied, and we are ready to support up to 3.4 million. So, the key here in the recovery plan is to first enhance the confidence of the people that it is safe to be at home, it is safe to go to the groceries, it is safe to work. So that is our top priority. The second is we have to stimulate domestic demand. And the easiest one to do now with clear impact is the entire food value chain, from the farms, the logistics, the preparation of the food, food production, to the selling of the food, all the way to your table. So we will prioritize that. And that is complementary to our gradual restarting of the Build program. That will create a lot of jobs, as we know. As I mentioned, we recorded the lowest poverty, unemployment, and underemployment rates, largely because of the Build program. So once you have, number one, confidence that it is safe and that the business will continue and you will have job. Second, that domestic demand can be stimulated, then it will create a very good virtuous cycle to get the economy started. Now, on the other hand, the government will push the Build program, and that will further increase the chances of people to participate. And that has a very big multiplier effect. So our recovery program will be along those lines.
Thank you, Secretary Chua. Next, let us hear from Mr. Ben De Vera.
Hello, good morning, USEC Mapa and Secretary Karl. For Sec Karl, my question is, so you said that second quarter might be worse, so it would definitely mean a deeper contraction. But by the second half, you said the Philippine economy can recover. Would you mean recovery reverting to growth, or would you still see any uh, continuing contraction in GDP in the third or fourth quarter, maybe a smaller contraction? And if I were to play devil's advocate, because in the second half of last year, we saw that as a result of the delayed budget, it was in the second half that spending really picked up and pushed the economy to grow faster. So if we have a high base for the second half of last year, what are the prospects for the second half of this year? Are the things we're doing right now, the health interventions to combat COVID-19, enough to not only, of course, ensure that Filipinos are healthy and safe from the disease, but also to ramp up or to recover, for the economy to recover? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben. Second quarter, as I mentioned, will be difficult because we saw the extension, the full month extension of the ECQ in April. The good news is, as of May 1, many areas of the country have moved to GCQ. So the main difference is in the ECQ, the maximum number of people that can really work and the maximum value added that the economy can operate is more closer to 25%. Under the GCQ, it is closer to 75%. So what this means is that there is a chance that we minimize the contraction, the expected contraction in the second quarter. And of course, I don't think we can dream of having achieved achieving our target of 6.5 by the end of the year. But as I mentioned, we can proactively use our policies and our readiness and our collective effort to achieve a respectable growth rate so that by the end of the year, we could actually hit the zero baseline GDP growth or maybe better. So it really depends on how we chart and proactively use our policies. Of course, the base effect is something that can happen. But, you know, last year, we had a slow start in the GDP, but we were able to catch up in the last a few months of the year. And we can also repeat this performance if we focus and work together.
Thank you, Secretary Chua. At this point, we could accommodate only up to 3 questions. We receive a message from Miss Lois. Is that a follow-up question? Could we unmute the mic of Miss Lois?
Hi. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, USEC Mapa and Secretary Chua. My question really is for Secretary Chua. you've mentioned that manufacturing mainly really a drag. So I know my colleague from Business World already asked about the new the DBCC targets for 2020, and it still is unchanged. Now, can we have the other DBCC macroeconomic numbers, because we understand that there had been an ad referendum meeting by the DBCC last March, and still the numbers are they are moving. So can we have, sir, exports and imports and inflation, and probably also the peso and the deficit to GDP ratio, Secretary, please? Thank you very much.
But thank you, Lois. Well, first of all, we do not invent or look up a crystal ball or look up the sky for the numbers. So GDP has just been revised today. So we will use that and incorporate it into our DBCC macro framework. I don't also memorize the numbers you are requesting from me. So let me review and send it to you after.
Thank you, Secretary Chua. We have two more upcoming questions. Let's hear first from Ms. Celerina Monte. Ms. Celerina, are you
Good
there?
morning. Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes po, you're clear.
Hello?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah, okay. Good morning. I'm Severina Monte from Manila Shimbun. To Secretary Chua. So you're a member of the IATF. Since the um, ECQ would expire by May 15, may we know what could be the recommendation of NEDA, if ever? Are you going to recommend to have another, to extend further the ECQ, or lift it to shift to GCQ?
Thank you, Celerina. We recommended that we use science and data to make the decision. And the IATF has approved a decision tool wherein the first thing we need to check is whether a particular LGU meets the minimum health standard. If the answer is no, then we cannot even do or lift the ECQ. If the LGU, like NCR for instance, meet the minimum health standard, we are going to check geographic risk of outbreak, meaning we look at case doubling time, which is, I think, slowing down, but we also look at the critical care capacity utilization so that we can adequately care for those who are sick. If those are met and are now going to be moderate or low risk, by the end of the period, May 15, then it is possible to move to GCQ. But if that is not yet addressed, then we cannot, because the priority here is about saving lives and ensuring that we do not put our people at risk. And if we put them at risk, we have to be able to care for them. Even if we move to GCQ, as we have seen in other LGUs, we will have to restrict the movement of the most vulnerable, those who are younger than 20 and above 60, with many exceptions, of course, because they have to buy food and also attend to their urgent needs. We also have to put restrictions on certain industries that are non-essentials. So this is the decision-making process that has been approved and will be used to make the decision. And we are looking at the data and the science, and our modelers are daily updating that. And once we see a good number, then we will make the proper recommendation.
Thank you, Sec Chua. We're having a follow-up question here from Ms. Celerina Monte.
Follow-up, sir. Sir, in the event that the ITF will decide that Manila or Calabar Zone or Central Luzon would remain under ECQ, what could be its impact on the economy? And another question is, you have mentioned that since there's this COVID problem, there's a need to shift to digital economy more. So right now, we haven't yet seen so much regarding this third telco. I don't know if other people share my observation, but do you think there's a need for telco at least? Thank you.
Thank, thank you. Well, as I mentioned, when we move from ECQ to GCQ, we are opening up to 75% of the economy. And that, of course, is good for the economic trajectory. And we are allowing up to 50% of the people to go out to work. Now, what we need to balance here is the increased risk of spreading the virus. Because if people go out and 50% of the people go out, they will have to take public transport. They don't know who their bus mates are or LRT mates, and contact tracing is going to be extremely difficult. So there are risks that we have to balance. Is it worth opening up the economy, but having more sick people and dying or dead people, including your own family members and friends? So that is really the main question. That is why we have to make this decision very carefully. Because yeah, some people want to open up, but if that is at the risk of your loved ones or friends, then you have to rethink it. And that is the challenge for us in government making the decision. Now, on the third telco, I am for open opportunities. I am open for having the most number of sustainable suppliers so that we see the quality and the price that the consumers deserve.
Thank you very much. I guess we could accommodate just one last question, and we will hear it from Ms. Kai Ordinario. Ms. Kai?
Hi. Hello. Can you hear me? Hello.
Yes, Kai, go ahead.
Okay. Sorry. I just wanted to ask. First question on first semester growth. So we're writing off the first half growth already, since you said Q2 is going to also be negative. Then can question. Is the government willing to consider universal basic income? Because some countries are already thinking about that to help their citizens cope with job losses and losses of income. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Well, let me first add to my previous answer that one of the priorities of NEDA is the passage of the Public Service Act. And that is basically to open as many sectors of the economy so we can attract the right technology, innovation, managerial skills, and talents, and also new ideas. And all of these can be summed up as more FDIs so that we provide the opportunity to the people in terms of lower price, higher quality, and more jobs. Now, on the universal basic income, of course, this is a very nice idea, and in principle, we should try our best to achieve it. But you know, the main question in economics, or the main principle that I want to share with everyone, I hope everyone learned it in school, is that number one, nothing comes free from heaven. Number two, there are trade-offs. So when we talk about a universal basic income, we have to ask ourselves who is going to pay for that. Many people will say the government should pay for that, but the government is just a pass-through institution. The government relies on equitable tax system to finance all its program. So that is the first point. The second point is a trade-off. Should we prioritize our very scarce resources on A or B or C? So when we have received an idea, what we in NEDA and the economic team, we are going to study it, look at the cost and benefit of each proposal, and see if that is really the best use of our scarce resource in a very difficult time, and to ensure that it is fair and the people or the segment of society that we are going to ask to contribute also understand the need for this. So that is where we are now on this.
Thank you, Secretary Chua. So this concludes the Q&A. Again, thank you very much to our resource persons, Acting Socioeconomic Planning Secretary, Karl Kendrick Chua, and USEC Claire Dennis Mapa. To all the participants and our friends from the media who joined in this press conference, thank you very much and good morning.